Hello everyone, my name is Aki Järvinen. I work at Digital Catapult as a lead technologist in Immersive, and today I'm going to share with you some of the findings from a UK at-home market research regarding virtual and augmented reality. And so this was a research project that was commissioned as part of the Audience of the Future demonstrator program funded by UKRI. And so us at Digital Catapult commissioned a piece of research. We chose Nielsen slash Superdata as our research partner and surveyed 500 UK residents some time ago in 2020 and 2021. And besides that, also gained some market data, market figures that I'm going to talk about going forward. And overall, this research project complemented the two first projects that we conducted as part of the program. So first one, Immersive Audience Journey, which was about studying immersive producers' notions and perceptions of audience and how they thought about audiences and all having to do with engaging audiences in a holistic manner. And the second one was about the business models in this creative immersive space in the UK and how immersive studios and producers out there are trying to create a sustainable business in this space. And we really want to serve these stakeholders, these parts of the ecosystem out there who are trying to make a sustainable business in the immersive space with certain understanding of how people consume this type of content at home, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, and then also give the producers an idea of the so-called total addressable market size in the UK. So even if in most cases the immersive market is global, especially when digitally distributed, but then the UK market is big enough that we can extrapolate, credible numbers regarding expectations for productions, revenue streams, also globally. But we also wanted to serve and share this data with specific UK use cases regarding immersive. So, for instance, cultural and heritage locations considering to engage with immersive production and reach out for their audiences. And so today I'm going to cover first the research methodology which Nielsen conducted the study, and we oversaw it at the Catapult. And then I will highlight some sort of more general things, the overview of the UK XR market, and then go into more detail regarding VR at home, augmented reality at home, but then also we did also ask in the survey about people's perceptions of using XR technologies at the workplace, and I will summarize some of our findings from that before then closing with some key takeaways we feel that are relevant for producers and commissioners and people who are investing into this space. So on with the research methodology. So as mentioned, there were two online surveys, and I think an important point here is that we wanted to survey people who had experience of virtual reality and owned headset and were active users to get a better picture of what is actually going on and how might that have changed during the pandemic. The same goes with augmented reality. We knew that augmented reality through smartphones will be more, mainstream, so to say, but still the same criteria applied. So we wanted to survey people who had used either virtual reality or augmented reality in the past 3 months at the time of taking this survey. And then through our research partner, Nielsen, we were able to tap into their business intelligence platform where they've been gathering data regarding the XR market for already years now. And we wanted to complement this self-reported survey data with some actual market numbers, because we feel that this is really something that is lacking in the space, and producers out there can only make sort of estimated guesses, if even that, regarding their expectation when thinking about smaller productions, especially which don't necessarily have a global reach. So this market data that I'll be sharing here today is complementing the self-reported survey by the informants at home. So let's go into the overview of the UK AR and VR consumer market. So first, with the perspective of the users. Now, this chart shows the monthly unique at-home users throughout the years based on the data we got. And we can see obviously that AR, because it's mostly predominated by smartphone use, it's much more popular. And we see that the early numbers regarding virtual reality there in 2016 are characterized by so-called light mobile headsets, so Google Cardboard and similar devices that you would use with your smartphone. And then only when we start getting closer to today, we are starting to see either the PC VR tethered headsets or the more recent standalone headsets start to sort of figure in the numbers. And so when we look at the user's age from the data, we see here the division between AR and VR. And what is important here to notice is that AR skews younger because of the smartphone dimension, and vice versa, VR skews older. And we will see throughout the data that VR tends to be something that people slightly older and with more disposable income, just because of the price of the headsets and so on and so forth, and the accessibility in that way. And some observations. So definitely the standalone VR headset, so starting from the Oculus Quest series, is accelerating the headset adoption. So in 2020, when obviously the pandemic was at its worst, we saw a nearly 400% growth in adoption, and this is projected to continue 20% year by year. Now, this base of VR users does consist predominantly of male users and males who are interested in general in technology and computer, and this is also reflected in the use, as we will see shortly, that it is dominated by games. But what is interesting here is this fact that we asked about, are there other users besides yourself sharing the headset, and 2/3 of the respondents did respond that in a typical month they shared the VR headset with at least one person. So from that you can make an estimate that out of the around 600,000 VR headsets in the UK during 2020, maybe 400,000 could be calculated as households. So if you want to sort of estimate the adoption in those terms, then we are at 400,000 headsets in the UK approximately. And you see the skew there between female and male users. Then regarding augmented reality, now obviously this is much more broadly popular technology. 50 times monthly users uniques in comparison to VR. And obviously then this also means that women make up a bigger share of augmented reality audience. And as mentioned, there is the skew to younger users because of the smartphone access. And as we will see going forward, social media AR applications are really driving this. And obviously younger people, even with less disposable income, can access AR through the AR features such as face filters that are available in the social media apps that they use. And now one specific data point having to do with the pandemic. So over half of the UK XR audience did report spending more time using XR during the pandemic. So 56% of AR users, 55% of VR users, and also significantly a third of VR users reported spending more money during this period on VR content. So engagement translates into spending. That's the takeaway from here. So if we then next look at the overview of the UK market from a hardware and revenue perspective, then what we see here is again like a continuum where the early days 5 years or so ago were dominated by those cardboard light, so-called light mobile headsets. Then there was a brief period when so-called premium mobile VR headsets, so predominantly Samsung Gear VR, took share of the market, and then also PSVR, so PlayStation VR, started having its market share. Now, when we come closer to today, we start seeing that it's the standalone headsets, mostly obviously Oculus Quest, and especially the second edition Oculus Quest 2, which was launched during 2020. They are starting to dominate the market, while the PC tethered headsets are still playing a part. And this projection that you see here also is then presuming that with PlayStation 5, the announced PSVR 2 will have a considerable market share going forward. Now, this data from Nielsen/Superdata regarding XR revenue includes consumer and enterprise spending, so that's important to note, and also the different peripherals having to do with the headsets. And then there's consumer spending on VR and AR software, so that we don't have specific numbers regarding enterprise spending regarding software. Overall, the UK factors like 6% of the world's total revenue this year, 2021, and VR generates the greatest share of those earnings. Mostly because most of the headsets that are sold are VR headsets, and then also direct revenues from software come from VR. So while mobile AR obviously has a greater reach, there's no as strong direct revenue streams as we will see in a minute. So these figures here, as said, does include enterprise numbers, and that explains, for instance, why since pretty much from 2018, there is a growing number having to do with AR/mixed reality headsets, so devices such as Microsoft HoloLens and HoloLens 2 and similar, and that's expected to grow, especially now that we are starting to see AR, the first generation of AR glasses coming to the consumer market, also in Europe and soon probably in the UK as well. Let's move on to a couple of observations regarding these earnings numbers. So especially with VR, location-based entertainment. So VR arcades, installations in museums and theme parks and so on and so forth was before the pandemic a major source of revenue, 42% in 2019. But now, obviously during the pandemic, that pretty much got shut down, and there's a projection I'll share in a minute, where basically the expectation with these numbers is that the location-based entertainment revenue from VR installations would not reach the 2019 levels before 2025. But things are starting to open up. There have been over the summer 2021 new installations opening, so we will see. That might be a slightly pessimistic view. But yes, during the pandemic, and this is expected to be the picture also for 2021, games accounted for the vast majority of home-based VR software revenue. Now, regarding augmented reality, really outside the sort of top of mind AR game title Pokemon Go, there doesn't really seem to be major revenue generators. And it seems that the earnings potential having to do with augmented reality has to do with advertising revenue and promotional activities, activations, for instance, in physical locations that encourage and drive people and audiences to buy real world goods and services rather than something in the AR application itself. And therefore, if we think about the sort of success of non-game augmented reality out there on mobile, direct consumer spending is not necessarily the correct metric. It's engagement, and then we would need to have data regarding the sort of translation, the conversion from those activations to actual physical world sales, which we don't have. And so it's here, going back to VR, we see that dip in the purple regarding location-based entertainment, and as mentioned, doesn't necessarily get back to the 2019 levels before a few years from now, and games keep on dominating. And then the other category has different applications having to do with productivity, fitness, which is growing, education, and so on and so forth. So here's a slightly more nuanced picture of the estimates, the expectation for this year, 2021. And it's important to note here that besides games, for instance, the interactive media category that tends to have most sort of productivity, creativity tools used for design, drawing, and that kind of stuff, that still plays a part. But especially if you look at areas of growth, it's like wellness, including fitness, really grew during 2020 and the pandemic, and also educational content is growing fast. And regarding AR, it's pretty sort of one-sided, the picture. So the direct revenue, really, there's no other category than games, and you can make a guess that most of this projected revenue comes from only a few titles, Pokemon Go, as mentioned, as being the primary one. And there is expected to be growth while platforms regarding multi-user AR and so on and so forth are coming to the market, and the smartphone manufacturers are developing their AR support further on with new handsets and so on and so forth. So let's look at virtual reality from the point of view of what do actually people do with it at home. And so here you see the most common uses of VR, and has become clear already. Games are the major thing, but I think the takeaway from this chart really is the fact that the data shows that typically VR users tend to interact with an average type of 3 types of content on a regular basis. And what that tells us is that there is an opportunity for storytelling, narrative content, productivity, creativity tools, and as I mentioned, for instance, wellness and fitness applications to grow. So once people adopt the headset, there is a good chance that they will also engage with other types of content than games. Now, regarding those gaming habits, it's clearly the highest form of engagement. So 4.7 hours a week was reported. And then there's a skew towards older users, while on the other hand, the younger cohort in our data skewed towards the social aspects of VR. So if you want to sort of make a estimated guess of the trends, it's social gaming that is bound to grow, which is of course in line with other trends out there having to do with buzzwords like the metaverse and so on and so forth. Now, regarding purchasing habits, over half of the users in our dataset reported to buy VR games regularly. But I think in terms of revenue streams, even more important finding is this, that over a third also purchased in-game content. So so-called downloadable content, new levels, new episodes. So those kinds of revenue models having to do with episodic content and will give you a longer tail of revenue. And that's for the creators out there, something that you should definitely plan for. And then about a fourth do regularly also pay for other types of content having to do with VR films, animations, and other types of apps than games. Now, there is certain gender differences as already highlighted in the VR use. So it skews male and basically people who are happy to spend on latest consumer electronics, whereas then AR with its smartphone distribution and access skews towards younger and female. So this brings us to AR and at its use with home consumers in the UK. So we'll cover a few most common things and having to do with also frequency. So most common use of AR really skews towards the social media applications. So basically the most popular category here is face filters in applications like Snapchat, Instagram, and so on and so forth. And then the other notable categories here are obviously games. There's some mentions of translation, like utility apps like that, but also the fourth one there, like virtual objects in the real world, that has potential applications, obviously, in the heritage space, for instance. So people are starting to get used to this kind of content. So that gives a certain encouragement to consumer AR application creators out there. But definitely, as you can see from this chart, social media is even more popular than broadly than games. And yes, it's those face filters that are really the sort of mainstream perception of what augmented reality enables. And also on the social AR front, it seems to be that it's the female users that drive the popularity, whereas males are in general more interested in games. And then students in that younger cohort that AR skews towards is an important cohort. So there might be some opportunities there having to do with, promoting activities and content for students going forward. Now, the weekly frequency of these different types of use cases is shown here as reported, and we can see that it's games and those face filters that really, are the most frequently used. And what is important here is that in the mobile space in general, frequency of use and retention in that sense often translates to opportunities for revenue, so monetization. So that's something that any AR application creator out there should consider, that, okay, how to build retention to this application, and therefore that might translate into revenue going forward. Now, there's here some estimates about the AR revenue in the UK. Games very much dominate that. And as mentioned already, the important point is that direct earnings outside games seems to be quite difficult, but that's where the sort of branded partnerships and branded content comes in. So a link to other types of physical goods or services through an AR activation seems to be the way to go at the moment, because direct spending in anything else in AR other than games seems to be challenging to persuade the users to do it. We also asked about advertising specifically regarding augmented reality, and it has emerged as this favorite business model thus far. And so then we asked about the reach and how many people have come across AR adverts, and roughly half of our users reported that. And this was how it was asked. So in a typical month, do you see AR advertisements, brands or products with AR? And 49% did report regularly seeing them. And then we asked about kind of engagement, in the sense that, okay, do people share this? Do they find them like interesting enough to create that social proof and that virality? And here you can see certain stats about how people share them, mostly with closest peers and relatives and family and so on and so forth. And yeah, so typically what is being advertised, what people saw was in line with really the other uses. So games, movies or TV shows were the most dominant ones, but then also in the female cohort, cosmetics have gained some traction within AR activations. And I'll end this segment with a slightly more technical piece of data. Here we see the breakdown of how people, which type of smartphones they used to access augmented reality. So according to this data, 55% of them used iOS, while 42% Android, and there's a breakdown of the different models back when the data was collected. Let's move on to XR at work. So as said, we wanted to get a sense of how people perceive use of XR in their workplace if they don't use it already. And so the likely uses of AR or VR at work, training came out top as something that people could use, so perceive as adding value. And then there are other categories here you see that also showed in the radar. But the important point here for people who are working in this space and working for more widespread adoption for XR applications at work, the key takeaway here is that it's not really, the perception is among potential users that it's not that the technology wouldn't be advanced enough. It's just that people don't see how these technologies could be used. And obviously, they can't be used for everything, but the takeaway really for people wanting to give XR solutions a chance is to argue and find that data for existing proven use cases out there, having to do, for instance, with training and its impact, and also its potential revenue savings in that sense that it might save from traveling, and it might enable sort of centralized training, for instance, in different ways. It might have some health and safety benefits and so on and so forth. So this kind of evangelizing just needs to happen throughout the different industries that are relevant for XR in the workplace to gain more traction. And so I'll close this talk with some key takeaways, some of which I've already mentioned, but let's summarize. So with VR, I think the important point is that while it is very much dominated by games in the UK user base, it also is a smart move from a business point of view, because there's a distribution model, there are app stores, and also those app stores do enable that longer tail of providing episodic content or downloadable content, and so more sort of long-lasting revenue streams. And the feasibility of this was backed by the data that over a third of the users who had purchased games also had purchased in-game content. So that's something to take into account if you're planning a VR game or an application, to build that roadmap of content beyond launch. Regarding AR, as mentioned, it's very difficult beyond branded, really high-profile games to create direct revenue from the consumer applications. Still, if you are able to do that, again, that long tail is important, but the more important takeaway here is that at the current moment, it's the indirect consumer spending from those activations. And if you have the luxury and the runway to plan for a longer term play into the mobile AR space, then most likely what makes sense is that you don't bank everything on a single shot at goal, on a single application, but you try to build a portfolio of AR productions and products, and then try to reach that truly mainstream audience that is out there and growing. And while you do that, it's important to remember that there's a considerable opportunity with AR with female users and younger users already using those social media aspects of other applications and their AR features. And so again, creating a wider range of AR applications, or even creating content that leverages those AR features, such as face filters out there, might be feasible business model. And regarding location-based entertainment and its return and recovery, it's really too early to say at this point in time. I would point you to one of the reports that I mentioned in the very beginning. So the Creative Immersive Landscape in the UK 2020 report does discuss this, and at the very end offers a few scenarios of how the recovery and the coming years might play out. So access that if you are planning to look into the location-based entertainment space. And this brings us to the close of this talk. So I hope you found that data useful, and any questions regarding it can be directed to me. So my email is here for that purpose. And at this point, I thank you for your attention, and goodbye. Take care.